Mozambique's top court has dismissed opposition party Renamo's application to have the results of its recent general election annulled, a scenario that Renamo has said could result in violence in the country just months after a historic peace deal. According to a written judgment posted on the Constitutional Council's website and dated the 11th of November, the council had dismissed the appeal to have the victory of President Filipe Nyusi and his party Renamo in the October 15 election annulled. The judgment said the applicant has not provided sufficient evidence to support its claim. It was hoped the presidential, legislative and provincial poll would set the seal on a peace pact signed between Nyusi and Renamo leader Osufo Momade in August that put an end to 4 decades of hostility between the two parties. Instead, it has stoked tensions as opposition parties said the vote was hit by major fraud. Momade has said the country risked sliding back into violence if the election results were validated. The run-up to the election was marred by violence, including from a breakaway group of former Renamo fighters which staged attacks in the country's central regions. A number of attacks have also taken place since the poll, with analysts fearing the outcome could worsen the violence. Well, Paul Fauvet is the editor of the Mozambique News Agency. He now joins us on the line from Maputo in Mozambique. Mr. Fauvet, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe. Well, we've seen in the past that each and every election, the opposition parties always cry foul at alleged irregularities, ostensibly at the hands of the incumbent parties. And not all of these parties have been coming forth with sufficient evidence to back their claims. Are you at all surprised by the Constitutional Court's ruling?
Not really. It should be remembered, though, that there are a large number of appeals going through the process, going through the Constitutional Council. This is by no means the end of the story, and we don't expect a final decision from the Constitutional Council on the validation of the elections until December. One of the problems with the Renamo appeal, it mixed different things together. It mixed administrative problems, which are within the remit of the Constitutional Council, with accusations of serious crimes, which are not, which have to go to the Attorney General's office. It's not the Constitutional Council that deals with accusations of ballot box stuffing, for instance. That is a serious crime, which the evidence of that needs to go to the Public Prosecutor's office. So this is going to drag on for some time yet. We won't get a final result from the Constitutional Council probably until the end of December. That was the case with the last general elections.
Now, the Renamo leader threatened that the country risked sliding back into violence if these election results were validated. I mean, this has been the popular sentiment. Just how significant is that particular risk? Well,
at the same time, while Momade did say that, he also said that he would not go back to war, that his faction of Renamo is still committed to the peace agreement that he signed with President Nyusi in early August. The wild card in all this is the breakaway group in Renamo, the so-called Renamo military junta, which is almost certainly responsible for the spate of attacks on roads in the centre of the country in recent weeks. President Nyusi himself was in one of the worst hit areas in Gorongosa district today, which he said quite clearly that there is going to be no more agreements, there are going to be no more amnesties, and the Defence and Security Forces will chase down those people who are responsible for the latest attacks. The government cannot be expected to go on signing peace agreements with any group of gunmen who split off from Renamo.
I mean, speaking of such peace agreements that have been signed about a couple of months ago, I mean, the general concern, Mr. Fauvet, is that some of the rebels have been plucked out from the trenches and from the bushes and reintegrated into civil society. But then nothing has changed. Nothing much has changed politically because the current status quo remains.
Well, I mean, the main clauses in the August peace agreement have yet to be implemented. A few of the Renamo people have been integrated into the armed forces and into the police. The bulk of them have not yet been integrated. And a key clause in the agreement was that by the 21st of August, all Renamo bases were to be dismantled. That has not happened. So everything is behind schedule. Still, I mean, it is positive that Super Mahmud at least says that he will not put his men back to war. And the Super Mahmud does at least have some claim to legitimacy, in that he was elected leader of Renamo at a Congress in January.
What's the likelihood then of Renamo coming to the party in terms of implementing some of the dictates or the requirements of the peace pact?
It's hard to tell right now, frankly. Renamo is clearly waiting to see what eventually happens with the election results, whether the Constitutional Council, in the end, just rubber stamps what the National Elections Commission has said, or whether it will make any changes. Remember, the Constitutional Council does not have to act on appeals from the opposition parties. They can make their own investigations, make their own decisions about any frauds or irregularities that were seen. And it's true that there were a large number of frauds and irregularities, though I personally have no doubt that Nyusi did win the election, but not by the huge margin that the National Elections Council says.
I mean, for some of the election observers, particularly from the European Union, crying foul that the level field wasn't particularly level, or the playing ground wasn't particularly level. Just to what kind of impact would this have on the credibility of the election results in general?
Well, I think the election results have serious problems with, in terms of integrity and credibility. For a start, the provincial elections commissions in key provinces such as Zambezia and Nampula, refused to accredit 3,000 independent observers, which seriously limited the capacity of independent groups to observe the elections. This was completely illegal, but they went ahead and they were not stopped by the National Commission. And then there are proven examples of ballot box stuffing, proven examples of people caught with extra ballot papers in their possession. And some of these cases have come to court and people have been sentenced. So it's known that these irregularities happened. And there were cases, particularly in Gaza and Tep provinces, of certain parts of the country reporting completely impossible turnouts of 80, 90, 95%. It's clearly an example of another form of ballot box stuffing. Nonetheless, this would reduce the majority given to, of Frelimo and of Nyusi, but it wouldn't eliminate it. Frelimo and Nyusi would still win the elections by a large margin.
So will Renamo feel alienated, particularly, some of the provisions of the Peace Pact are that Renamo will be able to select their governors directly as opposed to the central government doing the election or the appointment of these governors. But then now that they don't have political incumbency, at some point, I suppose they'll feel alienated. Am I correct?
No doubt. No doubt they will feel alienated. They can't have any governors because they lost in all the provinces. They lost in all the provinces. Not only in all the provinces, in all the districts. Nobody believes that in reality they lost in all 154 districts, but those are the official results. Renamo, I think, will eventually decide that it will not try to go back to war. Renamo will continue its role in Parliament, even though it has a reduced number of MPs, and Super Mahmud will continue in his role as official leader of the opposition. I don't think we're going to see. He doesn't want to go back to war. But Super Mahmud is not like his predecessor, Alfonso Dhlakama. He's not a man who wants to hang around for years in the bush.
Just as we wrap, Mr. Fauvet, how's the general feeling of on the ground of Mozambicans? Are they content at the latest?
I think people have having a wait and see attitude. It's not just the elections. We have the problems that you mentioned, the attacks on the roads in the centre of the country. We have the Islamist insurgency in the far north, in Cabo Delgado. These are serious problems which the government has to deal with. But there is some optimism because of the developments in the liquefied natural gas industry, the signing of key investment agreements with that. And if this comes off, then we will see massive production exports of liquefied natural gas as for about 2023, and that will change the country's financial situation dramatically.
All right, Mr. Fauvet, thank you so much for your time. That was Paul Fauvet. He is the editor of the Mozambique News Agency, joining us on the line from Maputo in Mozambique.